Good evening, Dr. Watson. I'm going to talk about disputes over grazing rights in Zambia, which is the title uh, for my thesis. I'm going to talk about 5 important points that are causing disputes over grazing rights in Zambia. First, I want to look at what's causing these disputes. We need to understand that the lack of adequate land is one of the points. Adequate land that is supposed to be available for the local and rural people in the western province of Zambia has not been made available to them, such that because of this problem there has been a shortage of land, which has caused, of course, disputes. When there is a shortage of land, you expect disputes. Few grazing rights, people cannot have adequate pasture, grasslands, and therefore this is one important aspect that has brought about this issue. Secondly is overgrazing. When these pastoral livestock keepers spend so much time, so long periods of time keeping their animals on the same place, on the same land, and they overgraze, they want to take their animals to a different location. And sometimes you find that when they take their animals from a different location from one place to another, most of the times they are invading another space that belongs to a different tribe or to a different community where the pasture seems to be available, in order for them to preserve their animals, to keep their animals, so that the animals do not die or due to lack of pasture. Thirdly is the banning of bushes. In the western province, it is a common tradition that in the dry season grasslands are normally burnt in order to allow the new grass to grow, and this also has caused is part of the reasons why conflicts are there, because when these people are burning those bushes, sometimes the fire becomes uncontrollable, and the fire can go further and affect other land, pasture lands or grasslands that belongs to other communities, and this also generates conflicts, and not only does it also generate conflicts, but it is also affecting the environment that is at the same time supposed to sustain these people on which they live. When they burn the grass, they're also destroying other important what's the best term that I can use? Some other creatures. They are destroying the ecosystems in these forests, in this grass that they are burning, which is very, very degrading to the ecosystem in itself. The other one is the investors. Investors are coming in, buying huge lands of land, but since most of the urban areas have been developed, and the only places that are remaining are places where these are pastoral, traditional people live. Most of the land, they use it for having the animals graze on the land. So when these investors come in and they want to buy huge portions of land, most of the land that is owned by traditional pastoral farmers is allocated to these investors. That means they cannot have the right to their grazing land. Once these investors start developing that land, they can't do that. But how do the big question is, how do we solve this problem? I've identified 3 important points on how we can solve this problem. First, of course, the government has to be involved. This is government intervention. The government has to be involved in this situation. If the government can provide funding to help the local people probably develop permanent grasslands, that could be used only for cattle feeding, or sheep or goats, or including pigs, That would help the local people in these surrounding areas, such that when the investors come in and they buy these huge lands, they cannot have the rights to those specific lands which the government has been able to provide to these people. It will just be for the local people, for the pastoral farmers, to be able to have the animals graze on those lands. Secondly, it's good policies. I mean, we it's quite understandable that for every project, for every good governance, there should be good policies in place. And when we talk about policies, we are talking about development, we're talking about training, we're also talking about financial provision, we're also talking about all these good components that would make a strategic framework of resolving these conflicts over grazing rights come to an end for the people of Western Province. I also want to look at that. I also want to look at the other aspects resulting from conflicts and disputes over these grazing rights. Is the environment? Is the environmental degradation or destruction of the ecosystem. That's another thing. When these animals graze in one place for a long time, and not only that, when they move from one place to another, they go through streams and trample the grass, trample other creatures. Destruction to the ecosystem is just so magnificent, because you are looking you're looking about maybe from 60 to maybe a few hundreds of cattle that these people might own for generations, for a long period of times, grazing in the same place over and over again. That is going to have an impact on the ecosystem. It will definitely have an impact on the ecosystem. So if these people can be trained in a way, I know that mostly in especially like in Zambia, in whether it's the Eastern Province or the Southern or the Western Province of Zambia, traditionally people have had grazing rights to their land for quite a number of for many hundreds of years. So for somebody to bring this training aspect into their living, on how they need to take care of their cattle, sometimes it may not be something that they are going to welcome. They are not going to welcome. It's very difficult for them to adapt and to welcome such a thing. But I therefore think that the best way of helping the local people become aware of the ecosystem by avoiding overgrazing and destruction of the ecosystem is by developing what I've come to term as the traditional bureaucracy kind of governing, where training, where the government does not specifically go to these people and say this is how we want you to do this thing. The government should be able to approach their chiefs, traditional leaders, and show them how their people can be able to understand how to protect the environment. You see, because when there is conflicts over grazing rights, that will also spill into having conflicts over the ecosystem, of course. So that has to be there is a connection there, because when people want to have more pasture lands, when they cannot maintain the ones they have, they begin to create a problem of the ecosystem. And when they are creating a problem within the ecosystem there, the other people within the same environment will face problems in developing that land, because it can't hold any water. It has turned into sand. There is a lot of gallows or gullies as a result of soil erosion taking place, and therefore it is the aspects of grazing, the aspects of rights to grazing land begins to develop into another problem. You see, not the other thing that I'd want to mention is the climate aspect of it as well. You see, many times we've said that it has been said that climate change is actually affecting how seasons uh, operate now in different parts of the world, including the western province of Zambia, which is my focus for this discussion. You see, but I want to reverse the situation by saying that actually disputes and conflicts over grazing rights actually also contributing to climate change. I know that may sound to be so that's interesting in itself, and at the same time very argumentative, which I welcome from every different angles of my critics. But the point that I'm trying to make is this: when you look at disputes over grazing rights, you see how traditional people in the Western Province would want to hold on to their places of their grasslands, their portions of land for their pasture, for their animals, right? It's so massive. You see, the land is so wide, it's so huge. It's not just something that is so small. It's huge land, and when all these animals continue to graze in those places, right now as I am talking right now, you find that certain places are just land that has been laid that has been left bare. Hardly nothing can grow in that place because the animals have totally destroyed that place, and because the people do not want to take their animals somewhere else, they leave them in the same place, and that place continues to lose the nutrients that are supposed to sustain the ecosystem, and because of that, plants are not able to produce enough nitrogen for the atmosphere, or enough oxygen to be released into the atmosphere. Instead, because the land is so open, the land is so bare, that all the carbon dioxide produced only goes up in the atmosphere, and therefore begins to attack the ozone layer, begins to destroy the ozone layer, thereby causing even increasing global warming. So you see, the pattern of disputes over grazing rights is not only about two families fighting over a small piece of land, a small piece of grass, but it is families also being affected by their own decision to hold on to those grazing rights in different ways. If they fight over those grazing rights, and they are given that land for their animals to feed on, for their animals to eat, for the animals to feed on that land, then they also, without proper traditional management of grasslands, without proper skills to apply to that land, they leave the rest of the grassland management aspect of it entirely open to cause global warming, because there is nothing to sustain the atmosphere. So basically, the disputes over grazing rights has caused so many conflicts over animals, conflicts over farming, and also conflicts over climate change, conflicts and disputes politically and economically, because then the government doesn't know what to do. The United Nations Food Program has come up with a program to help the pastoral farmers in the western province of Zambia and the eastern province of Zambia as well, to manage their pasture lands. The SADC, which is the Southern African Development Community, has also come up with a program to help the sub-Saharan African countries, especially the pastoral farmers, on how to manage their grasslands in order to avoid disputes and conflicts over grazing rights, in which many people have died. You're talking of not only in the western province, of which I want people that are listening to understand that it's not only in the western province which is the focus of my discussion right now, but also in countries like Zimbabwe, in Namibia, in South Africa, in Botswana. The whole of Southern Africa has been experiencing a dry climatic conditions where the rains have been very few, and as such, so many people are holding on to their grazing rights. And we talk about grazing rights, we're talking about land which they believe belongs to them, given to them by their ancestors, and they want to hold on to that. But time has come for these people to actually realize and to understand that that more needs to be done. More needs to be done. I know that the issue of grazing rights and the research that needs to accompany such a problem has been very, very limited in many aspects, even including by researchers. But it must be understood that this is a big problem. This is a big problem. That's why I really, really enjoyed doing this research on disputes over grazing rights in the Western Province of Zambia, because I have come to realize that the aspect created by these so many aspects have been created by the disputes over